I would like to take this opportunity to go ahead and get our program started. I know that everyone's time is valuable. It's turned out to be a quite nice evening out there, but I want to start off by thanking you for being concerned enough about the Home Rule Charter to come here tonight and hear the presentation. We had one presentation previously in Cross Creek Ranch, and so I think we had a really good presentation. We took comments afterward from the audience on, did our message give you the information you needed? And we had some constructive criticism, so we've done our best to implement that here for the meeting tonight. And then on May the 3rd, we'll have another meeting at the community room in Cross Creek Ranch. They're right next to the Welcome Center, and we hope to have, again, another good turnout for that. Before we do get started, we do have one of our council members, Councilmember Krennick, is here. So I want to thank her for being here. I don't know if I introduced myself, but everybody knows I'm the mayor of Fulshear, Tommy Kirkendall, correct? All right, good. How's it? We do have, I just wanted to introduce the gentleman up here who will be giving us our program. We've worked long and hard to develop the Home Rule Charter and go through the process. We have our City Administrator, CJ Snipes, Assistant City Administrator, Michael Ross. We have the Chairman of the Home Rule Charter Commission, CJ McDaniels. And then we have Grady Randall, who's with Randall Law. He gave the guidance to the Charter Commission during the development of the Charter. And so he's here to help answer the really tough questions that people have. So. Also, we do have several of our Home Rule Charter Commission members here. If I could just ask them to stand, we'll list their names on the board in a minute, but if you would just stand up. They are all wearing name tags. One thing that I felt was important, that they have a name tag, they're residents here in the community, they work together to develop the charter. If you have a question, and you don't want to ask it here in front of everyone else, if you'll just grab any one of these individuals, they'll be happy to share their thoughts and their comments with you, because they're the ones that developed it. I didn't develop it. Councilmember Krennick, our other council members, we weren't on the committee. We gave a few comments to the body. I think they took those under advisement and discussed them. They applied some they didn't. So these are the group of individuals who represent you as citizens of the city of Fulshear. So thank you all for your service and your effort. Give them a round of applause. With that, I'll turn it over to our City Administrator, CJ Snipes, to begin our program.
Thank you, Mayor. Hopefully I don't drive everybody crazy trying to get this back into the socket. Hey, it didn't fall. All right. Can everybody hear me? Good deal. As Mayor said, we had changed the format up just a little bit, so tonight we're going to sing these slides. Oh, no, I'm just kidding. I do want to say just real quick, express our thoughts and prayers to Dr. James Thurman. He gave part of the presentation last time and was invited to speak again tonight. He was hospitalized today earlier on an emergency basis, and so please keep him in your thoughts and prayers this evening. With that, I'm going to kind of kick us off and go through our agenda real quick. You won't have to hear me all night, but for a few more minutes. I'm going to turn it over to Michael and Grady in just a couple of seconds. But Grady, as the mayor did, he introduced, welcomed everybody introduced. I'm going to talk a little bit about city governance. Then Grady's going to speak about Evansville versus Abbott and its impact on Fulshear, because that's of primary importance to the question about zoning and districting when it comes time to elect our city council. Then Michael's going to present the facts on the Fulshear Charter, and then we're going to do a little Q&A. We do ask that you submit your questions in writing, because every question gets added to the FAQ. So if you really don't have anything to do late at night, you can go to the city's website and check out that FAQ. I think we're up to almost 30, we're well above 30-something questions now. So please check that out, and then we will close. To begin, the mayor and the council, their job is primarily to guide policy, and they're also to talk about the immediate and long-term needs for the city. And as most of y'all know, those of you who lived in the community for as short as 2 years, you've seen immense change in our community. When I came here in 2010, our population was 1,500. Today it's almost 8,000. And so we've had exponential growth, over 900% over the last 8 years. And so to get to a home rule charter, a lot of folks have asked the question, why haven't we done this before? We didn't get there until only very recently in terms of population. You have to hit 5,000 in order to qualify to have a home rule charter. We hit that mark in December 2014 and have been running through it ever since. In 2013, we began soliciting the volunteer applications, and in March of 2015, the Charter Commission was appointed. They held their first meeting in June. They were open to, all the meetings were open to the public, and they were governed by the Texas Open Meetings Act. They were very, very fastidious, I love that word, and very sure-handed in their work. They took their time, but they actually put in a lot of work and due diligence throughout the process. So they started in June, they finished up and delivered they completed the work on December 15th. And the council at that time asked for a secondary technical legal review of the document. And the attorney out of Austin that did the review told us that this was a well-written document. The charter members, who the mayor's already introduced, were C.J. McDaniel, the chair, Bill Archer, who was vice chair, Irma Beal, Larry Buscreen, John Dowdall, Cheryl Finney, Ken Knapp, James Molina, Gene Morgan, Kent Poole, Carolyn Randall, Holly Royer, and Randy Stacy. And they gave basically 2 nights a month in meeting time, and Lord knows how many hours of homework time in preparation for those meetings for a solid 6 months. This is the second workshop in our series, as Mayor mentioned before. We're going to do another one on May 3rd, so bring your wife and kids. It'll be a great time. We might do that one in musical format, just to try and get a few more folks out. We did mail out the charter on March 31st. I believe that most of those have now been delivered. I know that service was a little bit slow getting into Cross Creek Ranch. That has to do with some other fun issues we're dealing with at the city, where we have 3 post offices servicing our community, and different post offices move at different speeds. So hopefully everybody's received their charter now. If not, there are copies in the back. We ask that you take those. We're going to do another mailer. Now that the voter list has been finalized, we'll double check that list. It's also available on the city's website, and so if you have questions or if you want to find it, there's plenty of places to find it. I'm not sure it's made it to Amazon yet, but we'll see. Okay, they can all be hits, folks. The information is available on the city's website. We've also got the FAQ. In terms of why we're making this move, not only are we at 5,000 in a rapidly growing city, we're really interested in trying to guide our growth, and this is a natural progression for cities to take. If you take a look here in Fort Bend County, Missouri City, Katy, Rosenberg, Sugar Land, Stafford, and Richmond all have home rule charters and have all benefited immensely from the powers that they've derived therefrom. We've also, on our website, put together a really brilliant chart. It's awesome reading if you're a policy wonk like me. That Grady put together, kind of detailing and comparing our charter versus those other charters here in Fort Bend County, so you can see the similarities and the differences. And I think that you'll notice that most of the documents are very, very similar. And again, please don't, if you do have a question, please fill that out and provide that to us in writing so we can add that to the FAQ. All of this comes down to you, the voters. And on May 7th, you're going to be asked to vote yay or nay. And that's kind of what emblematic of the entire charter process. It's to give the residents the vote and the power to determine their own city's destiny. And so on May 7th, that'll be taken to you guys. This next part, and I'm just going to kind of wing it, so you guys, I hope I do Dr. Thurman proud. Dr. Thurman was supposed to give this talk. Of course, he won't be here this evening. Let's talk about local governments. Local governments are creatures of the state, and city governments are general purpose and provide a multitude of types of services. Everybody thinks about counties and school districts, and in Texas we have this really unique marble layer cake of governments, where we have special districts and counties, school districts, hospital districts, emergency service districts. Cities are a little bit special and apart because we have a little bit more authority than school districts, counties, or even MUDs. And then home rule cities have even more power than the general law city. So if you think about, and I don't want to put everybody to sleep, so please put your pillows back away. There are 2 types of cities in the state. There's the general law city, where it's a smaller city and the legislature basically says, we're going to tell you how you can operate. And then there's a home rule city, in which the voters of that city basically charter the destiny for their community. And so under a home rule charter, the citizens manage their affairs more than they do in a general law city. They don't need a specific grant of authority from the state to do certain things. And primary examples of those, and we'll keep hitting on these, but is the right to unilateral annexation. As a home rule city, if we want to expand our boundaries, our municipal boundaries, we basically have to beg the landowner to say, come into our city and incentivize that. Under our home rule charter, we don't have to incentivize that. We have to put together a plan that's fair for the landowner, but it's still a process that we can undertake unilaterally, and that helps us guide our growth a little bit more. We are constrained a little bit more locally adopted home rule charters rather than the state, so we guide our own destiny. And then the state and the federal government limits our home rule power, but it's to a much lesser degree than general law cities. And a perfect example of that is the restriction on sexual offender residency. Right now, Fulshear is not allowed to pass an ordinance restricting where sexual offenders live. The city of Meadows Place is currently being sued because they're a general law city that took that step. If you can tell me why kids in a home rule city are worthy of more protection than those in a general law city, I can't tell you. It's the same kid. It's the same. It should be the same level of protection. But the legislature doesn't believe right now that home rule or general law cities should have that power. So the other item that home rules allow for is the organization of government. And so there are basically several different types, mainly called mayor-council or council-manager form. You can have a strong mayor, a weak mayor, or a council-manager form of government under home rule. General law cities can adopt a city administrator, which is what they've done via ordinance here, but it is only the power of an ordinance. It's not written into an imbued contract between the residents and the city. We talked about annexation, and then the other major power that comes with home rule is the ability to conduct initiative, referendum, and recall. Right now, if you don't agree with an ordinance that gets passed, or you don't like the way that your representation on city council is going, there's really not a whole lot you can do about it. We'll wait for that 2-year cycle, and then, as the saying goes, vote the folks out. But under a home rule, if you see something going on that you don't like, you can collect enough signatures for a petition and conduct an initiative or a referendum on an ordinance, and you can recall those candidates that you don't, or those city council members that you don't think are performing to your standard. So it empowers the voter to a higher degree than you currently enjoy. And then there's also the right to charter amendments. And those can be done. We'll get into a little bit more detail on what that can do here in just a little while. I don't want to steal all of Michael's thunder. So. Essentially, as I described earlier, you have the mayor-council form of government. And if you'll note that 39 out of 351 home rule cities in Texas have a council-mayor form of government. Those include the big guys like Houston and Pasadena and Texas City. But the majority of home rule cities actually go to the council-manager form of government. About 89%. And examples of council manager form are Sugar Land, Katy, Rosenberg, Missouri City, and Richmond. And so Dallas is a council manager form. Austin, Houston's the only major city that doesn't have that. The next figure I'm going to show you actually details out cities across the country. And again, you can see that the council manager form of government is predominant in cities in our size. Or cities that grow as rapidly as we are growing. So we talked about the need for cities, home rule charter. I talked about the local control. There are 2 different forms of government. This current charter that's proposed for you is a council manager form, which follows the norm around the state. But at the end of the day, what citizens really want is a well-run city with garbage collection, stray dogs controlled, low crime, and potholes that get fixed, not to mention fiscal responsibility. And home rule, I think, will probably allow us to give us more control over those items as we move forward. With that, I'm going to turn the lectern over to Mr. Grady Randall, and he's going to talk about the very recent decision, Evanwell versus Abbott, and how that impacts the districting as it relates to Fulshear's charter. Grady?
Good evening. I'm going to talk about the Supreme Court case, and
You want the mic?
no, I'll show.
Okay.
The Supreme Court case and the Evanwell decision, and how that affects districts in this proposed charter. Sorry about this. But I have to draw. And if you've ever been to my 3rd grade Sunday school class, you never know where this is going to end up, but we're going to give it a try. Now, Evanwell was a lawsuit filed 2013, and it was argued December 7th, 2015. The day before the last meeting of the Charter Commission. And that case involved the question of how do you draw districts. In this case, it was the Texas Senate districts. Do you do it by voters, or do you do it by population? And there was some chatter in the blogs called SCOTUS block, Supreme Court of the United States, SCOTUS block, about whether this case would reach the question of the intersection between the 14th Amendment, one person, one vote, and the Voting Rights Act, no dilution of votes. In other words, every vote should have the same weight. And I'll get to that in a minute. There's been some question about, well, why weren't the districts in the charter itself? Well, if you look at the United States Constitution, all the House of Representatives districts are not in the United States Constitution. Texas wasn't even a state in 1770 or 89 when it was drawn up. Likewise, in Texas, the Texas Constitution, even with its 444 amendments, literally, the districts for your state representative are not in the Constitution. Why? Because those districts are dynamic. They grow, they contrast. You know, in 2010, like CJ said, there were 1,500 people here. Zeros was the representative. Now we've got 8,000. You're growing at 1,000%. So that may entail another representative coming in here sometime in the future. So you don't put it in your Constitution because it changes too much. And you'd have to have a constitutional amendment or a charter amendment to do that. But you set out the parameters. You say they shall be apportioned by population. And that's what this case was on. So Evanwell was argued December 7th. And typical for the Supreme Court is they don't make a decision until the last minute, or they don't get the opinion ready. And that usually comes out in June, and they usually recess before the 4th of July. Well, surprise, surprise, last Monday they made a decision. And even a bigger surprise, it was unanimous. Now remember, Scalia has died since the argument, so he didn't get to write on the opinion. But it was unanimous, and the Chief Justice Roberts, assigned the opinion to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, one of the more liberal members of the court. So what was everybody in the Twittersphere was all tweeting about was, wow, this court is really united. They're unanimous on this, that it is population. Underscore that. Districts will be drawn based on population, period. Not voters, not anything else. Population. So, how does that affect Fulshear? Well, if you look at the charter, it's caused a little bit of angst. Under section 3.03, the last sentence, the Charter Commission put this in at my suggestion that we would put in this last sentence to address whatever Evanwell, this case, whatever Evanwell decided, and in case there was ever a challenge to the charter under the Voting Rights Act of 1964. And that sentence reads, for only the at-large council member position, the City Council may by ordinance establish additional qualifications for candidates or establish no more than 2 districts within which a candidate must reside or vote. So that was insurance. That was protection for you, because y'all are the voters. That if whatever the court decided in Evanwell, you could adjust your charter without having to go through an expensive election or have it challenged by the Department of Justice. So, now it's time for math, and I know Mr. Stacy broke his phone coming in here, so I need somebody to pull their phone out and do some math for me. We're going to go through a little exercise, and I'm going to show you generally what I think your districts will be like. Now, I'm not a districting expert. The Charter Commission was told that. One of the issues that the Commission faced was the Census Bureau did not count Fulshear residents precisely because they had the wrong information on the city limits. So we had no true, correct census data. Also, until this year, you were one precinct. So we didn't have any precinct data. So the experts, if the charter passes, whoever the city hires, won't be me, will have to go and build that database and say, all right, how many people are here, how many people are here, what's their race, what's their other demographic information, and build that database to be able to generally point out and plot where people are and how this would grow. But I can give you a general idea. So, a little cheat sheet here, so here we go. What is proposed under the charter is 5 districts. 2 at large. You'll have to go with my pig Latin phrasing here. And 1 mayor. Currently, you have a 5-member council and a mayor. So with a 7-member council, what's a majority vote on council? 4. So we have a majority of 4. Under the old, or under your general law system, a majority was 3. Occasionally, it requires a supermajority vote. And a supermajority is a majority plus 1. So a supermajority is going to be 5 under the new system. Under the old system, it was 4. There is no such thing as a supermajority. So we don't go to 6. And if you go to 7, you're unanimous. With me so far? All right. The total population of Fulshear, I'm going to round up, is about 8,000. Current. What is the population of Cross Creek Ranch?
6,800.
6,800? 69? So then that leaves what I call Old Town, Bodar, and other? Full. 68 from 8,000 is 1,200, right? Lawyers are not math majors until it comes time to split profits, and then everybody's an Einstein in your law firm. All right. Right, Tricia? 5 districts into 8,000 is what?
1,600.
So, we now have the population of a district. So a district is going to equal, well, is going to approximate 1,600 people. Now the Evanwell case, here it is, with the opinion by unanimous opinion, and then a concurrence, and then a concurrence in part on the other, but they call it a unanimous. They said you can vary those districts, reciting old law, by 10%. So if you go less, you've got 160 minus from 1,600 is 1440 or 1760. So this part here is a 10% variance. Now, the court said anything approaching 16% is probably not constitutional. So anything over 10% up to 16%, you're going to get a good examination by somebody. So 16% times 1,600 minus that is what? We can get our minimum population. Anybody? 1,600 times 16% is what?
256.
256. 1,600 minus 256 is?
1,344.
All right. So the minimum population of a district is 1,344. The maximum population of the district is 1,600 plus 256 is
1856.
1856. Okay. That's the max, that's the minimum, the average is going to be 1,600. Your districts are going to be 1,600. Now, divide 1,600 into Cross Creek Ranch's population of 6,800. What do you get?
4.25.
4.25. So Cross Creek Ranch, by Supreme Court authority, is going to have at least 4 districts out of the 5. What's a majority in a 7-member council?
7.
Cross Creek Ranch will have a majority of the council, a majority vote. What does Cross Creek Ranch have now under a 5-person system? How many members are from Cross Creek Ranch? 3. They have a majority now. Nothing changes as far as votes go. Now, we have the 2 at large here. Here's where it really gets tricky with my drawing. What's the best way to draw this? I'm going to start over here. That's Fulshear. Here is 1093. Oops, that's right there. This is 359. This is Bodar. This is Cross Creek Ranch. They're going to have 4 districts. You've got 2 at large. So they're floating out here, and at large means everybody votes on them. The whole city. Out of 6,800 people, out of 6,800 population, and we're just assuming this for argument's sake, that every person is a voter. I don't know what the voting population is of Cross Creek Ranch because nobody has done those demographics yet. Or the Old Town, or Bodar, or Fulton. But let's just assume, for argument's sake, everybody's a voter that's a citizen. 6,800 out of 8,000. You would think that Cross Creek Ranch would be able to elect at least 1 at large. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
They're going to do 1 at. 4 plus 1 is 5. I can do that in my head. 5 equals what?
Supermajority.
A supermajority. Cross Creek Ranch has a supermajority. It's math. There's no argument here. It's just math. Now, where is the 5th district? The 5th district is basically everybody else. Now, that's 1,200. The lowest we can go is 1,344. So there may be a little bit of Cross Creek Ranch in the 5th district. These are rough numbers. I don't know where they would go. So Cross Creek Ranch, and I hate to say it this way because, like Lincoln said, a nation divided against itself falls. This is not a city within a city where you are all, whatever the plural of Fulshearites? Fulshearians. You are all those. Soda Green? No, I'm taking it out. But what this means is Cross Creek Ranch has a potential of 6 out of 7 of the council. If you count this and it takes part of that in, it depends on how you want to phrase it, but they could have it all. Now you've got the other at-large, and where does it go? If the 6,800 continue to vote and vote in a block, and there's nothing monolithic about Cross Creek Ranch. Will they vote for somebody just because they're from Cross Creek Ranch? Maybe. But in the last election, you had Jeff Roberts and Ramona, non-Cross Creek Ranch people that were elected in an at-large position. So you have this other at-large floating around here someplace. Now, the reason the language was put in 3.03 that the city council in the future could, if they choose to, put some qualifications, is to attempt to address the voter dilution charge by the Department of Justice and say this other at-large could be from someplace else other than Cross Creek Ranch. Or not. Or it could be, who knows where the district would be drawn. You could draw it right down 1093, take it north of 359. You could split it diagonally this way. You could draw it wherever you want to draw it or leave it alone. The second at-large position will not come into effect until 2018. And on 2018, under the charter amendment process, you can do it no sooner than every 2 years. You, the citizens, if you don't want the protection, take it out. Have a charter election and excise that sentence. And then you don't have to deal with it. Now, why in the world would anybody in this area want to vote for this charter if Cross Creek Ranch is going to get a minimum of 4 plus an at-large? I'll tell you why. It's the weight of your vote. So if it takes, say we have 8,000 here, and everybody votes, it's utopia and everybody casts the ballot. To win this election, it takes 4,001 vote to win an election. To win it in a district, where's my district? 1,600, it takes 801 to win an election. Your vote counts more if you have to compete, if this district representative is beholden to 1,600 people as opposed to 8,000 people. So you, Old Town, and Fullbrook, and Bodar have a bigger club to swing because you're doing 801, not 4,001. That's why you vote for this, because you have a representative tied to your interest. Part of the theory of at-large is they're not tied to a district, so they have a little bigger picture view. So under your current system, it's 5 at-large. And it's usually those at-large positions are by place. So you have a person in place 1, and you have an opponent on that person. And you can run against just that one person. You don't have that. It is the wild, wild west out here. You have no places. So it is, you don't win by a majority vote, you win by a plurality. So in today's election, in a month, less than a month, it's the top 3 vote getters. It's a plurality. Now, this is my intersection. This is the 14th Amendment. This is the Voting Rights Act. 14th Amendment says one person, one vote. Absolutely. Voting Rights Act says no dilution. What is it? Diluting your vote, making it less, making it less weight, in other words. So let me just quote. The Supreme Court, in affirming population, and again, it is population of if, ands, or buts. Jurisdictions are now permitted to deviate somewhat from a perfect population equality to accommodate traditional objectives, among them preserving the integrity of a political subdivision, maintaining communities of interest, and creating geographic compactness. The Voting Rights Act the Supreme Court said, in that case, this court has long recognized that multi-member districts and at-large voting schemes may operate to minimize or cancel out the voting strength of racial minorities in the voting population. So you have this crossroads here, and this is what we thought Evanwell might get to. They didn't, but they might get to, of balancing one person, one vote with no dilution. And what the Voting Rights Act remedy is they allow you to go to a smaller district if you have geographical compactness or a community of interest. Otherwise, your vote is diluted. So these people, Old Town, Fullbrook, and Bodar, are swallowed up by Cross Creek Ranch. Now, it's not a us or them. Let me make that clear. The chairman of the Charter Commission is from Cross Creek Ranch. The majority of council that I work for is from Cross Creek Ranch. But there is a balancing that the sentence allows you to do. So you go away from your general law status of all at large to districts. But we left two there because that's quite a change from all at large to all districts. We wanted some overview for the bigger city, but we gave you a ace in your best pocket if some young, ambitious assistant U.S. attorney wanted to make a career case out of bothering Fulshear. So, let me just summarize here. Your districts are going to be about 1,600, according to today's population. Cross Creek Ranch, it's math, it's a minimum of 4, that's a majority. They elected one at large, that's a super majority. There's not a super majority. The rest of Fulshear has a guaranteed representative that is beholden to a majority of the votes here in this district. This is not an attempt to circumscribe Cross Creek Ranch's power, nor is it an attempt to preserve power of Old Town, or Bodar, or Fulbrook. It is a balancing of those acts. So, I don't mean to preach. I'm not trying to advocate. I can't advocate. I just tell you the facts so you can make an informed decision. But 4 districts and 1 at large, plus 1 other and 1 other at large, and of course the mayor elected at large. And those are districts 101.
I will touch on what the proposed charter has in it. That is before the voters, May 7th. Fulshear's proposed charter includes a council manager form of government, as was described earlier. It includes 7 council positions, 5 single-member districts, and 2 at-large positions. The right for initiative, for referendum, and for recall, and an amendment and revision to the charter opportunity. As stated previously, the city manager is appointed or removed by the city council. He is responsible, he or she, for the day-to-day operations. He is or she is beholden to, I'll use the generic phrase, beholden to council's policies no matter what. The Charter Commission felt that 7 council members was a good number given the population growth faced by the city. The population today is 7,959, and the city has seen 1,000% growth since 2000. Today, proposed is 5 single-member districts and 2 at-large. This implementation and expansion would occur over 4 election cycles. The mayor would be elected at large, and there would be term limits for 3 consecutive 2-year terms. Again, the single-member districts are determined by demographics and not geography. Council will hire an independent expert to guide the process each time. Council controls the process just like the state legislature does. Based on the current population, each district would contain approximately 1,600 residents, and it must be evaluated every decennial census, but can be changed more frequently based on changes in population. The at-large members are elected by all voters in the city. Council may, but is not compelled to modify for geographic restrictions. Even if modified, all voters in the city would vote on those candidates. The mayor would preside at council meetings, gives up the role as the chief executive officer of the city, and only votes in the event of a tie, continues to appoint committees, and retains emergency powers. The proposed charter provides residents the powers of initiative, referendum, and recall. I'll go into what those mean. Initiative means that if enough registered voters agree that they may enact ordinances based on initiatives presented directly to the voters. Initiative requires a valid petition signed by 10% of voters registered prior to the last election. Referendum. Voters may also hold referendums to reject certain ordinances at the ballot box. Referendum requires a valid petition signed by 10% of voters registered prior to the last election. The power of initiative and referendum cannot be used to modify certain ordinances, including budget, taxation, among others. And recall. Voters can also recall their elected officials. Recall requires a valid petition signed by 20% of the voters registered prior to the last election. And under general law, there is no provision for these powers. So this would only come if home rule was approved. The City Council must appoint a committee to review the charter every 5 years. However, it can appoint such a committee every 2 years if so desired. The charter is meant to be a living document subject to the desires of an empowered electorate. The city will, of course, still be subject to federal and state statutory and constitutional constraints, but the powers available to the city are greatly expanded under the Home Rule Charter. Those powers would include unilateral annexation, which is a huge tool in guiding the future development, and the ability to regulate where registered sex offenders reside, among others. And again, we're happy to answer any questions. If you would just fill out a question card, and we'll bring those to the front and one of us will take the time to answer that. Thank you very much.
Does everyone have a card if you have a question?
Mike, I really thought you were going to use sock puppets for that. We rehearsed earlier this afternoon. Looks like we got a couple more questions matriculating in. We do have 2 questions, and I'm going to try and pull the mic out without shattering everybody's ears real quick. So bear with me. Yeah, that worked. That worked. And I'm going to walk it, maybe. Over here, and Grady, we'll put you on the spot first. Let's play Stump the Chump.
The chump? I get no respect. Respect. All right, question. We've heard if the HRC passes and the city manager is corrupt, there is no way to get rid of him. Is this true? Part of the stats on who has council manager form of government. As CJ said, most of the cities except for Houston have a council manager form of government. Houston has what's called a strong mayor, but really he hires the chief of staff that is, in fact, the city manager. Now, as far as corruption, the long arm of the law reaches into Fulshear, and Fulshear is subject to criminal laws just like anybody else. Specifically to that question, it is I'll point out several provisions of the charter. 3.06, general duties of the city council. A, the city council may make investigations into the affairs of the city and the conduct of any city department, office, or agency, and for this purpose may subpoena witnesses, administer oaths, take testimony, and require production of evidence. You do not want to be the subject of that. So if a city manager is corrupt, the city council can just start an investigation, subpoena his records, his or her records, and determine if there is any malfeasance. 4.01. Well, also, the city manager has to be reviewed once a year, but cannot be reviewed more than twice a year. So that review would come in there. 4.01C, the city manager may be removed only by at least 2/3 supermajority of the full city council. And no hearing is required prior to the removal of the city manager. So what is 2/3? That's legal speak for a supermajority. What's a supermajority over there? 5. So 5 out of 7 you can remove the manager. 4.02A, the city manager shall be the chief executive officer of the city, responsible to the city council for the management of all city affairs. So he or she is responsible to the city council. They have complete control over the manager. Now, it doesn't bleed down to department heads. You can't say, hire this person or dig the ditch here. You tell the city manager, go tell your department head, dig the ditch here, or it would really please us if you had hired this person, but they're not required to. But the city council certainly has, and the mayor certainly has power over the city manager. And then finally, 5.04, there is an annual audit required by state law for city finances. The Charter Commission went one step above that and said it had to be an outside independent auditor, not an internal auditor, an outside auditor. So I have no idea what the stats are on, on the council manager form of government. Most of them are. And there is a way to get rid of a bad apple. Who's next?
Me.
This question is, if home rule charter should not pass, is it possible for all of the city council members to live in one area, like Cross Creek Ranch? And could they all live in one section of one neighborhood? The simple answer is yes. Basically, what we have today is all at-large voting. And there would be nothing to prevent 5 neighbors from all applying and running for council and a neighborhood or a group of citizens electing them. Therefore, having not only a majority, but a supermajority. However, that being said, it is likely, and I would yield to my barrister friend here, I think it would be likely that if that were the case, at some point in time, one of these young district attorneys from the Department of Justice would probably question how long that could go on. I don't know definitively, but it could happen, but probably won't happen with the new system, hopefully.
I just want to dovetail on what Mr. McDaniel just kind of laid out, because I actually lived that. My dad was elected to city council in 1986, and he and 4 people who lived on the same street all got elected in the same election at large. So it can definitely happen. Subsequent to that, they passed a home rule charter and districted out the city, but it definitely can happen. It's something that folks need to be aware of.
And this is a question kind of along the same lines as last time, and we have provided an answer on our frequently asked questions on the website, but we'll address it again. Will the commission consider adding wording that Fulshear will respect the laws and Constitution of the U.S. and will pass no ordinances that are in violation of them, or that refrains employees from enforcing federal laws? And again, the current document is the document, the charter that's before the voters on May 7th. It can't be revised. If it is approved, then 2 years later, if it was needed, the council could revise that and consider any amendments at that time. It should be noted that in Article 6, Clause 2 of the United States Constitution and subsequent Supreme Court rulings, they make it clear that the Constitution and all federal laws made pursuant to the Constitution and are the supreme law of the land, and as such, the states and all creatures deriving their power therefrom are compelled to follow those laws. Under a charter, the citizens of Fulshear have the right to call a referendum or a recall election, or repeal the law, or recall the council members voting for it. You currently do not have that right as a general law city. So, bottom line, cities have to continue to follow federal and state laws. The only thing the Home Rule Charter gives them is the ability to do things that are not prohibited by those laws.
So I'm going to ask a further question to that. So basically, Katy is a sanctuary city, Houston is a sanctuary city. So with this, my husband asked the eloquent question, and I'm asking a concerning citizen question about the council then could actually move forward and make Fulshear a sanctuary city under this home rule charter. And the only way that we could not have that is to petition it or to not vote on the charter. I have a deep concern about illegal immigration.
Under the general law form of government that the city is under now, if the council took it in their mind to do that, they could try. And there is no recourse you have other than at the ballot box to not elect them when they come up for a new term.
Well, none of the council members have put anything that sets them apart from the other council member on their sheet. I'm not seeing this come up anywhere.
I try to stay out of politics.
I'm just telling you, and this is a very concerning situation.
Well, let me finish my answer. Under a home rule system, if they did that and you didn't like it, you could circulate a petition and it's 10% of the voters.
Right.
And you could initiate a referendum to have the voters vote on whether that law should be effective or not. Or, if they really made you mad, you could get 20% of the voters and recall that city council person or persons. You don't have that power now. You have more power under a home rule charter because it's what I call IRR, initiative, referendum, and recall. It's more direct control by you, the voter.
Yeah, there's actually less chance of penalty now for doing that than there would be under the home rule charter, is the simple answer.
Or we could say, don't vote for it, and then the people of Fulshear, we say we want a charter and we do it after the election. We hold a new city election with regard to a changed charter. We could do something like that. We could petition before it even gets and say, don't vote for it.
Don't vote for what? I'm
Don't
sorry.
vote for the charter.
Because why?
Because we want this put in there, so just let's not even vote for it, let's delay the charter, and let's have a different election later. So, I mean, there's some other options, I think, that we as...
And you could initiate
Absolutely,
an amendment to the charter,
absolutely.
and in 2018, put that in there. That's your choice.
Right, just so we don't get too far afield, right now you could not hold a referendum on that. The vote on the charter will be straight up or straight down.
Okay.
The next question, I'm going to put my glasses on real quick so I don't completely murder it. Does the council member have to live in the district they represent? And so I'm assuming that the question means if the charter passes and we go to single members, yes, the answer is if they live in if they're representing a single member district, they have to reside within that district that they represent.
When they take office,
When they take office, yes.
not during the election.
I guess everybody could hear breaking down on that. And then there's another part to that question I want to go ahead and kind of tackle just a little bit. Is the representation on the current council, including those running for office, to properly represent each district? I don't know the geography of where everybody lives currently, but I would imagine that we may have some overlap in districts at some point.
How does becoming a home rule city enhance Fulshear's ability to collect residents' trash, provide water, sewer service, etc.? This was touched on in one of the slides, and basically that's something that doesn't necessarily change a lot because that is the city's charge, is to provide those services to city residents, and that's kind of what CJ was driving home on the slide. Is that's our function as city staff and as your city council members. It is to provide those essential services that we all expect day in and day out.
Anybody else?
Question is, with the growth we've seen in the state of Texas, surely there is another city under its council manager system of government that has run into the same problem.
I'm sorry, you're going to have to...
Same issue that we're having, whether or not to vote.
Oh, there have been lots of other cities that have looked at whether or not to move forward on a charter. At last session, we had somebody ask, was there a city that failed to pass a charter? At that point, we were literally stumped on that question. We did find one, Prairie View, in 2012, opted not to go to a home rule. 2 years later, though, they opted to move forward with the home rule charter.
So my question actually is there a city in Texas that has dealt with this issue before, passed a home rule charter, that we can go look at their home rule charter to see how they addressed it?
Oh, definitely. And I would encourage you to go to the website and take a look at the matrix there to compare the home rule charters for...
Not for cities around here. I'm talking about in the state of Texas.
Well, there are plenty of other charters online that you can go check. I would invite you to take a look at Frisco, Texas,
Okay.
or Salina, Texas, or one of those cities up in North Texas that have made that transition. My hometown of Saxe, Texas. Central Texas, it's very common. Most cities, when they hit that 5,000 mark, want to take on that responsibility of home rule charter. How they design their government is determined by the voters and within that document, but it's very common for other cities to take the step of adopting a home rule charter.
Do you know any that specifically have an issue of one concentrated area like Fulshear does?
Nothing, well, I would think about Pearland and Shadow Creek Ranch back in the day. And maybe also Sugarland when they were undergoing their process it wasn't First Colony. It was First Colony, wasn't it? First Colony totally dominated Sugarland for a number of years. So it's not that uncommon to see a rapidly growing community dominated by a particular neighborhood, and over time that changes. And I would think that if you went back and took a look at the evolution of the charters in Missouri City and Sugarland and Pearland, you'd see changes and amendments to the charters and how the district's laid out to deal with that. Because these are meant to be a living document. And even though it mandates a 5-year review, you're allowed to review it every 2 years. And so I think that given the nature and the rate of growth that we're experiencing here in Fulshear, I anticipate seeing changes and amendments every 2 years for a long time, because we can't foresee everything that's going to happen in this community. We have a pretty good idea about the growth, but we can't foresee everything. And if you don't mind, could you encapsulate that in writing for me?
Yeah.
I'd really appreciate it. Oh, yeah, and Michael makes the point, 351 home rule cities in the state of Texas, and 312 have adopted a council manager form of government. So it's, oh, I'm sorry, 351 of 390. Oh, CJ McDaniel, you're throwing out new stats. Thank you very much, sir. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
How much is this going to cost
How much is which going to cost?
if we adopt this? And
Compared to what you're currently seeing now, really, the city, as Michael alluded to, we still have to collect the garbage, we still have to put police on the streets, we still have to repair the roads, the drainage. You're not, being home rule versus being general law, you're not going to see a significant increase in cost. There will be some increase in cost related to like the development of an annexation plan. But there will also be offsetting revenues that come with those annexations to buy down that cost. But the reality is as rapidly as we're growing, those services, those positions, the essence of being a city isn't going to change. It's how we govern ourselves that is going to change if the charter's adopted.
isn't it going to cost more money to have a city manager, that kind of thing?
You've already got a city administrator. I'll turn it over to the mayor here.
Okay.
Yeah, that was one comment that I did want to make. Our previous council members and myself, we saw the need in the rapid growth to hire a city administrator. We couldn't call him a city manager because we're a general law city. But we have been functioning that way with the city administrator and the assistant city administrator guiding the day-to-day operations. We've grown from 5 employees to 50 over the last 6 years. That takes somebody, well, more than one somebody, on the ground managing those operations day in and day out. So effectively, we're operating that way. I'm still the chief executive officer of the city, but I think some of the other advantages that were pointed out here for being able to adopt those sex offender residency ordinances, being able to go back with initiative, referendum, or recall, and have more accountability on myself and our other council members. The other comment that I had was the city of Richmond, they were the most recent Fort Bend County city to go home rule in 2013. They're going right now through a home rule charter review and revision process. So they stayed, they were just 3 commissioners, including one of those persons was the mayor. So they were were they the only city that had that in the state practically?
Yes.
They were an anomaly. But when they adopted their home rule charter, they said, we don't want to change that much, let's keep it that way. Well, in 2 years, now they're looking at expanding to a couple more council members. Are they looking at districts also? I couldn't remember, or places?
I haven't heard that.
I couldn't remember, but they are going through that process in just 2 short years. As far as the costs go, I'm sure that to draw our boundaries and to do the demographics, there will be some additional costs for that. But we already have a city administrator. I think for your day-to-day operations, we shouldn't see an increase in cost. We should develop more efficiencies in the end. Any further questions? I'd like to thank everyone for spending your time out here listening to the presentation. I hope that you've been able to gain some more information to better help you make the decision. After the presentation tonight, if you have some suggestions on how we presented the information, because you don't think about general law and home rule and the rules of the city on a daily basis, but we're trying to be more effective in just communicating that to you. I want to thank CJ, Michael, CJ, and Grady. Let's give them a round of applause for their work. And again, thank the Home Rule Charter Commission, because they spent hundreds of hours working on this document. And so it's in your hands. We have one more meeting on May the 3rd. It's going to be at the Cross Creek Ranch Community Room. And so if you're not doing anything that night, we'd love to have you back out there. Thank y'all.